Captain Sarah Chun stared at the dead console screen and felt her heart sink. The main engine had finally given up after 3 days of warning signs. Now the cargo ship Endeavour drifted in empty space like a dying whale. "How long do we have?" she asked her engineer. Marcus Webb wiped grease from his hands with a dirty cloth. His face was grim. "Life support will last maybe 6 days. The engine is completely dead. I can't fix it without parts we don't have." Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. 47 people depended on her decisions. They were 3 weeks away from the nearest human colony, traveling through a region of space where few ships ever came. Their emergency beacon had been sending distress calls for 2 days. But space was vast and empty. "Keep working on it," she told Webb. "Maybe you'll think of something." But she knew he wouldn't. The Endeavour was an old ship, already past its prime when Sarah bought it 5 years ago. She had been hauling mining equipment to the outer colonies, trying to make enough money to retire. Now it looked like she would die out here with her crew. On the 3rd day, something changed. The ship's sensors picked up a contact approaching from the direction of deep space. Sarah hurried to the bridge, her heart beating fast. Maybe someone had heard their distress call. The ship that appeared on their screens was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It moved with grace through space, its hull seeming to flow like water. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the cargo ship Endeavour. We are in distress and request assistance." The reply came in perfect English, though the voice was soft and musical. "This is Commander Zela of the Whisper of Tides. We have received your distress signal. Do you require aid?" "Yes, desperately. Our engine is dead, and our life support is failing." There was a long pause. Sarah could hear the alien commander talking to someone else in a language that sounded like singing water. When Zyla spoke again, her voice was careful. "Captain Chun, my people do not usually interact with other species. However, we cannot let you die when we have the power to help. Will you accept our assistance?" "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." The alien ship, the Whisper of Tides, moved close to the Endeavour. Sarah watched in amazement as a docking tube extended from the strange vessel and connected to their airlock. Soon, 3 figures in flowing robes came aboard. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold starlight. They moved like dancers, every gesture smooth and purposeful. Commander Zela was the tallest, with silver marks on her forehead that shifted like living metal. "Your people are suffering from oxygen poisoning," Zela said, scanning the bridge with a device that hummed softly. "We will provide medical aid while my engineers examine your ship." The Vatar, as they called themselves, worked like nothing Sarah had ever seen. Their medical specialist treated the crew members who had been getting sick from the failing life support. The medicine they used came in small crystals that dissolved under the tongue and immediately made people feel better. Meanwhile, their engineer studied the Endeavour's engine with tools that seemed to bend space around them. After 6 hours, he spoke to Zyla in their musical language. "We cannot fully repair your engine," Zyla explained. "However, we can modify it to function long enough to reach your colony. The journey will take 2 weeks instead of 3. "That's incredible," Sarah said. "How can we repay you?" "We have some valuable cargo, or we could transfer credits to your accounts." Zyla tilted her head, and Sarah thought she saw sadness in those starlit eyes. "We require no payment, Captain Chun. We ask only that you not report our location to your authorities." "But why?" "You've saved our lives. Your technology could benefit everyone. My people have chosen isolation for good reasons. The galaxy is full of violence and greed. We prefer to travel in peace and help where we can, without becoming involved in the conflicts of others." The Vatar worked for another day to repair the Endeavor's engine. They also left behind several of their medical crystals and a device that would keep the life support system running smoothly. When they were done, Commander Zila came to say goodbye. "Your ship will carry you home safely," she said. "May the stars light your path." "Wait," Sarah called as Zila turned to leave. "At least tell me why you helped us. You said your people don't usually get involved." Zila paused at the airlock. "Because, Captain Chun, the stars are cold enough without letting kindness die in them. Perhaps someday, when your people have grown wise, we may meet again under better circumstances." The Whisper of Tides undocked and moved away into deep space. Within minutes, it had vanished completely, leaving no trace it had ever been there. Sarah ordered the modified engine started, and felt relief flood through her as it hummed to life. The journey home took exactly 2 weeks. The crew remained healthy thanks to the Vitar medicine, and the engine ran perfectly despite its age. When they reached Port Helena, Sarah immediately filed a report about their rescue. The colonial authorities listened to her story with polite skepticism. No one had heard of the Vatar. There were no records of ships matching the description of the Whisper of Tides. Some officials suggested that oxygen poisoning might have caused hallucinations, but Sarah knew what she had seen. She kept the medical crystals as proof, and more importantly, she kept the memory of Commander Zila's kindness. Every member of her crew remembered the aliens, who had saved their lives and asked for nothing in return. Sarah retired from shipping after that voyage, but she never forgot her debt to the Vitar. She told the story to her children and grandchildren, making them promise to remember. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, there were beings who helped others simply because it was right. The least humanity could do was remember that kindness, even if they never saw the Vatar again. Dr. Yuki Tanaka pushed her glasses up her nose and stared at the old file on her screen. She had been researching humanity's early encounters with alien species for 3 years now, digging through mountains of old reports and forgotten records. Most were boring trade agreements or first contact protocols. But this one was different. The report was filed by Captain Sarah Chun in 2187, 200 years ago. It described a rescue by an unknown alien species called the Vatar. What made it interesting was not just the story itself, but what Tanaka had found when she started looking deeper. This was the 18th similar report she had discovered. Tanaka worked in the Human Cultural Archive on New Geneva, a massive facility that stored humanity's historical records. Most people thought her job was dusty and boring, but she loved uncovering forgotten stories. And the Vatar were the most fascinating mystery she had ever found. Every report followed the same pattern. Human ships in desperate trouble, often with failing life support or dead engines. Then mysterious aliens would appear from nowhere, provide help, and vanish again. They always refused payment. They always asked for their location to be kept secret. And they always seemed to appear just when death was certain. The reports came from all over human space, spanning 2 centuries. Cargo haulers, exploration ships, even military vessels had been saved by the Vatar. The aliens used technology that human engineers still couldn't understand. Yet they never tried to make contact officially or establish trade relations. Most telling of all, every report had been buried in bureaucracy or dismissed as unreliable. None of the officers who filed them had been promoted or given important posts afterward. It was as if the government wanted these encounters forgotten. Tanaka printed out all 18 reports and spread them across her desk. The pictures were grainy and the technical details were limited, but certain details remained consistent. Ships that moved like flowing water. Aliens with pale blue skin and starlit eyes. Medical technology that used crystals. And always acts of pure kindness with no expectation of reward. Working late again? asked Dr. Mills, her colleague, as he stopped by her desk. "Tom, look at these," Tanaka said, showing him the reports. "I think I found evidence of the most generous species in the galaxy." Mills read through several reports, his eyebrows rising higher with each page. "This is incredible. Why haven't I heard about these people before?" "Because someone doesn't want us to know about them. Look at the filing dates and the classification codes. These reports were all buried or marked as unconfirmed, but the details are too consistent to be made up. So, what are you going to do about it?" Tanaka smiled. "I'm going to tell everyone." She spent the next month writing a research paper about the Vatar encounters. She included every detail she could find, every consistent element across 2 centuries of reports. When she submitted it to the Journal of Xenological Studies, the editors were skeptical but intrigued enough to publish it. The paper created a sensation in academic circles, then spread to the public through news networks and social media. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about the mysterious Vatar. Old spacer families came forward with their own stories, passed down through generations. Most couldn't be verified, but they all described the same kind beings who helped without asking for anything in return. Captain Sarah Chun's granddaughter, Maria Santos, gave interviews about the medical crystals her family had preserved. When tested, the crystals showed molecular structures that human science couldn't reproduce. They were proof that something extraordinary had happened in the deep space between stars. The story captured humanity's imagination like nothing had in decades. Children drew pictures of the graceful Vatar ships. Musicians composed songs about angels in the void. Writers created stories about the mysterious benefactors who appeared when hope was lost. But more than entertainment, the Vatar became something deeper for humanity. They represented a debt that had never been repaid. Across human space, people began to feel uncomfortable about this. Humans prided themselves on paying their debts and honoring their obligations. The idea that an entire species had saved human lives repeatedly, asking nothing in return, bothered people at a fundamental level. Search expeditions were organized. Wealthy individuals funded exploration missions to look for signs of Vatar activity. The government, under pressure from citizens, quietly began monitoring deep space for ships matching Vatar descriptions. Tanaka found herself at the center of a cultural movement she hadn't expected. She received thousands of messages from humans all over the galaxy, thanking her for bringing the Vatar story to light. Many asked the same question: how do we find them to say thank you? "I never meant to start this," she told Mills one evening as they watched news coverage of another Vatar search mission. "Maybe that's exactly why you did start it," Mills replied. "You found a story about kindness, and humans need to believe kindness exists, especially kindness that asks for nothing back." The search for the Vatar became more than just exploration. It became a test of human character. Some people wanted to find them to gain access to their advanced technology. Others wanted to establish trade relations. But most simply wanted to say thank you and ask how humanity could repay their generosity. Religious groups declared the Vatar to be angels or divine messengers. Scientists wanted to study their technology. Politicians saw potential allies in galactic affairs. But ordinary citizens just wanted to find the beings who had saved their ancestors and somehow make things even. The search continued for months, without success. The Vatar seemed to have vanished from known space, if they had ever been there at all. Some people began to doubt the stories. Maybe the reports really were hallucinations or hoaxes, but Tanaka knew better. She had spent too much time with the evidence to doubt its truth. Somewhere out in the vast galaxy, there were beings who helped others simply because it was right. They had saved human lives and asked for nothing. They had shown humanity what pure kindness looked like. The least humanity could do was remember that kindness and be ready to repay it. Tanaka established the Vatar Memorial Foundation, dedicated to preserving the stories and continuing the search. Every year on the anniversary of Captain Chun's rescue, humans across the galaxy observed a moment of silence for the unknown benefactors, who had saved so many of their people. The Foundation's motto, carved in stone above its entrance, expressed humanity's deepest commitment. No kindness forgotten, no debt unpaid. It was a promise that would matter more than anyone could imagine. Commander Zila's great-granddaughter, Neltar, stood on the bridge of the Whisper of Tides and watched her homeworld burn. The ship that bore her ancestor's name was one of only 12 Vatar vessels that has escaped the initial attack. Below them, cities that had stood for thousands of years were being reduced to ash and ruin. The attackers called themselves the Sarthex Hegemony, an alliance of 6 aggressive species that have been expanding across this region of space for the past 50 years. They demanded tribute from weaker civilizations, technology, resources, and complete submission to their rule. The Vatar had tried to remain hidden as they had for centuries. Their homeworld lay deep within the Dark Nebula, a region most species considered uninhabitable due to dangerous radiation and navigation hazards. The Vatar had learned to live with these conditions, using them as natural protection from the outside galaxy, but the hegemony had found them anyway. Status report, Neltar asked her science officer. Mordain. 17 cities destroyed completely. The civilian evacuation ships are under attack. We've lost contact with the rescue fleet. Mordain's voice was steady, but Neltar could see the pain in his starlit eyes. The Sarthex had come without warning or negotiation. Their massive warships had emerged from hyperspace and immediately begun orbital bombardment. When the Vatar tried to communicate, asking why they were being attacked, the hegemony's response was simple: submit or die. The Vatar were advanced in many ways, but they had never been warriors. Their ships were designed for exploration and rescue, not combat. Against the hegemony's military fleet, they might as well have been throwing stones at a mountain. Incoming transmission from the surface, reported the communications officer. The face that appeared on the screen was that of Elder Silvar, the leader of the Vatar Council. Behind her, Neltar could see smoke and fire from the burning capital city. The hegemony has given us one final chance to surrender, Silvar said. They want our gravitational manipulation technology, our medical knowledge, and half our population as workers. If we refuse, they will destroy every city on the planet. Neltar felt anger rise in her chest, a rare emotion for peaceful people. Elder, we cannot give them our technology. They would use it to enslave other species. I know, child. That is why the Council has reached a difficult decision. We will not surrender our knowledge to those who would use it for evil. But we also cannot let our people die when there might be another choice. What do you mean? Silvar's expression was sad but determined. Your ancestor Zyla left detailed records of her encounters with the humans. She believed that species had the potential for great good if they learned wisdom. Perhaps it is time to discover if she was right. Neltar understood immediately. The idea went against everything the Vatar had believed for generations. They had stayed hidden from galactic politics, helping others in secret but never asking for aid in return. Elder, the humans may not even remember us. Those encounters were centuries ago. Humans are known for their long memories, especially regarding debts. And our need is desperate. The hegemony will not stop with us. They will use our technology to conquer others. Someone must warn the galaxy. Another explosion shook the planet's surface, visible even from orbit. Time was running out. I will send the message, Neltar said. It took 3 hours to compose the transmission. It had to be sent on frequencies the humans would monitor in their language with enough detail to prove its authenticity. Neltar included recordings from Xylos, personal logs, and technical specifications that only someone who had actually encountered Vatar technology would know. The message was simple. This is Commander Nelter of the Vatar vessel, Whisper of Tides. Our homeworld is under attack by the Sarthex hegemony. They seek to steal our technology and enslave our people. We have always helped others in their darkest hours, asking nothing in return. Now we find ourselves in need. The children of Xyla are dying. If humanity remembers the kindness shown to Captain Sarah Chun and others like her, we ask for aid. Our coordinates are attached. As Nelter prepared to send the message, Elder Silvar contacted her again. The hegemony fleet is moving into position for a final assault, Silvar reported. They have given us 1 hour to surrender. The message is ready, Elder. But even if the humans receive it and decide to help, they cannot arrive in time to save the cities. Then we will buy them time. The defense fleet will engage the hegemony ships. We may not be warriors, but we will not die quietly. Nelter watched in horror as the remaining Vatar ships, vessels designed for peace and exploration, moved to attack the massive hegemony fleet. It was a hopeless battle, but her people fought with desperate courage. The Whisper of Tides itself joined the attack, using its gravitational manipulators to disrupt enemy formations. But there were too many hegemony ships, and they were too well armed. One by one, the Vatar vessels were destroyed. Nelter sent the message to human space, just as her ship's shields failed. A hegemony blast tore through the Whisper of Tides, killing most of her crew. As damage alarms screamed around her, Nelter watched the original Whisper of Tides, the ship that had saved Captain Chun so long ago, explode in a ball of fire. This is Admiral Kekstar of the Sarthex hegemony, came a broadcast to all surviving ships. Your resistance is over. Surrender immediately, or we will begin executing civilian prisoners. Nelter's ship was dying, but its communication system still worked. She managed to send one final transmission to human space. The hegemony is using civilians as hostages. Please hurry. Then the Whisper of Tides went dark, drifting among the wreckage of her sister ships. Below, the last cities of the Vatar homeworld burned while their people waited for salvation that might never come dot in the cold space above the dying world. Nelter closed her eyes and remembered her ancestors' words. The stars are cold enough without letting kindness die in them. She had done all she could. Now it was up to the humans to prove whether they remembered the meaning of gratitude, or whether kindness would truly die in the darkness between stars. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was in her office reviewing grant applications when the priority alert came through the Human Cultural Archives communication system. As Director of Historical Research, she received many urgent messages, but this one made her heart stop. The transmission was from the Dark Nebula, sent on emergency frequencies. The voice was musical and sad, speaking accented English in patterns she had studied for years. It was a Vatar calling for help. Tanaka's hand shook as she played the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Then she activated the Cultural Memory Network, the system that connected every human colony, ship, and station across known space. Within minutes, Nelter's plea was being broadcast to billions of humans. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On New Geneva, crowds gathered around public screens to watch the Vatar message. Many people cried when they heard the desperation in Nelter's voice. On the mining station Kepler-7, workers abandoned their shifts to volunteer for rescue missions. In the outer colonies, families who had passed down stories of Vatar rescues began calling their representatives, demanding action. Captain Maria Santos, great-granddaughter of Sarah Chun, was commanding a cargo run to the Tau Ceti system when the message reached her ship. She immediately changed course for Earth, broadcasting her intention to join any rescue effort. Within an hour, Her communication board was filled with messages from other ship captains making the same decision. But the most surprising response came from Admiral Marcus Cole, grandson of Marcus Webb, the engineer who had been saved on the original Endeavour. Cole commanded the Third Fleet from his flagship Never Forgotten. When he received Nelter's message, he did something unprecedented in military history. He called a press conference and spoke directly to the human people. 200 years ago, my grandfather was dying in space when the Vatar saved his life, Cole said, his weathered face serious on screens across human space. They asked for nothing in return except that we not report their location. They trusted us to keep their secret. Now they need our help, and they have broken that secrecy to ask for it. Cole paused, looking directly into the camera. I am requesting permission to take the Third Fleet to their aid. But more than that, I am asking every human being who has ever benefited from Vatar kindness to join this mission. Our ancestors were saved by people who asked for nothing. Now it's our turn to save them. The political establishment tried to slow things down. Emergency sessions were called in the Human Senate. Military commanders worried about committing forces without proper planning. Diplomats wanted to negotiate with the Sarthex, hegemony first, but the human people had already made their decision. On every world, in every system, humans demanded action. Politicians who urged caution found themselves voted out of office within days. Military officers who questioned the mission were transferred by their own subordinates. The message from ordinary citizens was clear. The debt to the Vatar was not political or military. It was personal. Ships began converging on Earth from across human space. Military vessels, cargo haulers, research ships, passenger liners, mining platforms, exploration craft, and countless civilian vessels whose crews simply refused to be left behind. The largest fleet in human history was assembling, not for conquest or profit, but to repay a debt of gratitude. Dr. Yamamoto, a scientist who had spent years trying to understand Vatar medical technology, converted her research vessel into a mobile hospital ship. Captain Rodriguez, whose family had been saved by the Vatar 3 generations ago, brought his entire merchant fleet. Even the luxury cruise liner Stellar Princess was refitted with defensive weapons and emergency supplies. The speed of the mobilization amazed military planners. What should have taken months was accomplished in 2 weeks. Humans dropped everything to join the rescue fleet. Factories worked around the clock to produce ammunition and supplies. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels switched to constructing makeshift warships. Admiral Cole found himself in command of over 3,000 vessels of every size and type. It was a fleet that existed for one purpose: to save the people who had saved humanity. But the Sarthex hegemony was not impressed by human sentiment. Their ambassador, a massive reptilian creature named Gexmore, arrived on Earth to deliver an ultimatum. The hegemony has claimed the Vatar system and all its resources. Gexmore announced to the Human Senate, any interference will be considered an act of war. You humans are not ready for such a conflict. Withdraw your ships and submit to hegemony authority, or face the consequences. The Senate prepared to debate the threat. But Admiral Cole spoke first. Ambassador, you have made one critical error in your calculations, Cole said, his voice calm but deadly serious. You assume this is about politics or territory. It isn't. This is about paying a debt. And humans always pay their debts. Cole turned to address the watching crowds and broadcast audiences. The hegemony demands we abandon our friends to slavery and death. They threaten war if we refuse. My response is simple. Let them try to stop us. The cheering from the crowds was so loud it could be heard in orbit. Gexmore tried one last threat. You are 3,000 ships against our 10,000. Your fleet is mostly civilians with no military training. You will be destroyed. Cole smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Ambassador, you're thinking like a conqueror. We're not here to conquer anything. We're here to save our friends and punish those who hurt them. There's a difference. The ambassador left Earth that day with a message for his superiors. The humans were coming, and they didn't care about the odds as the vast rescue fleet prepared to depart. Nalter's second message reached Earth. It was weaker than the first. Transmitted from a damaged ship hiding in the asteroid belt around the Vatar system. It confirmed humanity's worst fears. The orbital bombardment had begun. Cities were burning, and thousands of Vatar were dead or captured. But it also included tactical information about hegemony ship positions and weaknesses. Nalter was still fighting, still trying to save her people. Admiral Cole addressed his fleet before they departed. We go to repay a debt 2 centuries in the making. The Vatar saved our people when they were dying in space. Now we will save them. And we will show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens humanity's friends. The fleet departed Earth orbit in waves, each ship broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. This is the human debt collection fleet. We are coming to collect what is owed to our friends. Stand aside or be moved aside. Behind them, Earth's defense networks came online for the first time in a century. If the hegemony wanted a war, humanity was ready to give them one. But first, they had friends to save and debts to pay. The journey to the Dark Nebula would take 3 days at maximum speed. 3 days to prepare for a battle that would determine whether kindness or cruelty ruled the galaxy. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Dark Nebula like an avalanche of stars. 3,000 ships spread across space in formations that stretched for millions of kilometers. At their head, Admiral Cole's flagship Never Forgotten led the charge toward the Vatar homeworld. What they found there made even hardened military officers sick with rage. The beautiful planet that had once been home to the peaceful Vatar was scarred with massive craters. Entire continents showed the burns of orbital bombardment. The elegant cities that Nalter's people had built over millennia were now smoking ruins. Worse, the hegemony had positioned prisoner ships in orbit, filled with Vatar civilians to use as human shields. Admiral Kekstar of the Sarthex hegemony broadcast a message to the approaching human fleet. Turn back now, or watch these creatures die. We have 50,000 prisoners in these ships. Attack us, and we will execute them all. Admiral Cole's response was broadcast across both fleets. Admiral Kekstar, you have made 2 mistakes. First, you assume we won't find a way to save every single hostage. Second, you assume we'll let you live after threatening innocents. The Battle of the Dark Nebula began with precision, not rage. Captain Liu Zhou commanded the converted mining ship Perseverance. Her vessel looked harmless compared to the massive warships around it, but Liu had spent 20 years mining asteroids in dangerous systems. She knew how to use industrial equipment in ways that would surprise military commanders. While the main fleets engaged, Liu guided her ship through the asteroid belt surrounding the system. The Perseverance used its mining lasers to hollow out the largest asteroid, creating a tunnel. Then the ship hid inside and waited. When the hegemony moved their command vessels into what they thought was a secure position behind the asteroid field, Liu struck. The Perseverance burst from the hollow asteroid directly behind enemy lines, its mining charges tearing through unprepared ships. Dr. Sarah Okafor commanded the research vessel Discovery, which had been testing experimental gravitational weapons. Her team had been trying to develop better space propulsion, but desperate times called for creative solutions. The gravitational projectors designed to push ships faster instead tore hegemony formations apart, creating artificial gravity wells that crushed enemy vessels. But the most devastating attacks came from the civilian volunteers. Captain Rodriguez brought his entire merchant fleet into battle against warships 3 times their size. His cargo haulers had been loaded with every weapon the human factories could produce. When hegemony ships tried to destroy what they thought were easy targets, they found themselves facing vessels that exploded like bombs, taking entire enemy squadrons with them. The luxury liner Stellar Princess had been converted into a rescue ship. While the warships fought, Captain Martinez guided her through the battle to reach the hegemony prisoner ships. Her team used cunning torches designed for ship repair to slice through enemy hulls and rescue their civilians, but Admiral Kekstar was cunning. When he realized the humans were winning, he ordered his forces to retreat to a defensive position around the largest prison ship. 50,000 Vatar civilians were trapped inside, and he held a weapon to their heads. "Surrender now, or one. We'll vent the atmosphere from this ship," Kekstar broadcast. "Your precious Vatar will die in seconds." That was when the galaxy learned why threatening innocents in front of humans was a fatal mistake. Admiral Cole had been holding back his most powerful ships for exactly this moment. The Dreadnought, never forgotten, accelerated to ramming speed, its shields glowing white-hot as it plowed through the hegemony defensive line. "This is Admiral Cole to all human forces," came the broadcast. "Anyone who harms civilians dies. No exceptions, no mercy, no survivors." The never-forgotten smashed through 3 hegemony cruisers and rammed directly into Kekstar's flagship. Cole had calculated the impact perfectly. The collision destroyed the enemy command ship's weapons, but left its prisoner compartments intact. As the two ships locked together, Cole led a boarding party into the enemy vessel. They found Kekstar in his command center, wounded but alive. "You've doomed your own ship to save creatures you barely know," Kekstar snarled. Cole looked at the alien admiral with cold eyes. "You still don't understand. We're not saving strangers. We're saving family. The Vatar became our family the moment they helped us without asking for anything in return." Cole's boarding team secured all the prison ships within 2 hours. The Vatar civilians were rescued and transferred to human medical vessels. Nalta herself was found unconscious in the wreckage of her ship, badly injured but alive. With the hostages safe, the human fleet's true fury was unleashed. The battle that followed was less a military engagement than an execution. Human ships that had been carefully avoiding civilian casualties now showed no restraint toward their enemies. Mining vessels used their industrial lasers to cut hegemony warships in half. Research ships turned their scientific instruments into weapons of terrible efficiency. Most frightening of all were the civilian volunteers. Cargo pilots who had never fired a weapon in anger fought with the desperate courage of parents defending their children. Their ships were outgunned and under-armored, but they flew with a reckless determination that terrified their enemies. The Sarthex hegemony had conquered dozens of systems through overwhelming force and ruthless tactics. But they had never faced an enemy that fought not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that good people should be protected and evil people should be stopped. Within 6 hours, the hegemony fleet was destroyed or scattered. Some ships escaped to spread word of their defeat. Others surrendered and begged for mercy they had never shown to others. Admiral Cole broadcast a message that would echo across the galaxy. To any who threaten the innocent, this is what happens when you mistake human compassion for human weakness. We are slow to anger, but when we are angry, we are terrible. Learn from this or experience it yourself. In the aftermath of the battle, human medical teams worked around the clock to treat wounded Vatar. The Discovery used its gravitational technology to help stabilize the planet's damaged ecosystem. Cargo ships brought supplies and prefabricated shelters to replace the destroyed cities. Neltar, recovering from her injuries, met with Admiral Cole in the human fleet's medical ship. "We can never repay what you have done for us," she said, her voice weak but grateful. Cole shook his head. "Commander, the debt was ours to pay. Your people saved human lives for 2 centuries without asking for anything. We just returned the favor. And now? Now, you have a choice. Your people can rebuild in isolation, as before. Or you can join the galactic community under human protection. We promise that no one will threaten you again. Nelter thought of her ancestor Zyla, who had believed humans might someday learn wisdom. I think Zyla would say the time for hiding is over. My people are ready to take their place among the stars, with humanity as our friends. The news of the human victory spread across the galaxy within days. The Sarthx hegemony collapsed as member species either surrendered to human forces or fled to distant systems. Other aggressive powers took note of what had happened and reconsidered their own expansionist plans. But the most important change was in how other species viewed humanity. The galaxy learned that humans were a species that made friendship sacred and revenge absolute. Earn their loyalty and gain protectors who would cross the galaxy to save you. Threaten their friends and discover why civilizations learned to fear the sound of human ships dropping out of hyperspace. Years later, when historians wrote about the Battle of the Dark Nebula, they would note that it began with the smallest possible cause, one species helping another without expecting reward. But it ended with a demonstration that kindness, when repaid with kindness, could indeed shake worlds. Every human ship now carried a small Vatar crystal as a gift from their rescued friends. It served as a reminder of an important truth. In a cold and dangerous galaxy, the bonds between good people were the strongest force of all, and humanity would never let those bonds be broken.